Let's talk this time about milk and cheese. What can go wrong with milk? A natural product comes straight from the cow. What can be the problem? Yet, anyone who's familiar with hechsherim knows that you have products that is written on them, chalav akum, chalav Yisrael, that it's the milk, Jewish milk and non-Jewish milk. What does it mean? What's the problem here? What is non-Jewish milk? What is chalav akum? As long as you know that there's nothing added to the milk apart from water, there's not really any problems of kashrut with milk. The problem that can come up with milk is that we have a rule in kashrut that anything that comes from a kosher animal is kosher, while there's anything that comes from a non-kosher animal is not kosher. So the milk of non-kosher animals, the milk of a pig, of a camel, of a horse, all these animals' milks are treif. They're also for us to drink. Just like the animal itself, we're not allowed to eat, so also the same thing with its milk. How do we know that the milk that we're drinking is the milk of a cow and not the milk of a pig? Do we need a hechsher for that? We need to know. We need to know that it's not pig's milk. But everyone asks a very big question, that the question begs to be answered. Today, in our modern world, no one sells pig's milk. Even if they wanted to sell it and people wanted to buy it, you wouldn't be allowed to. It doesn't have the stamp of all the health organizations. All the milk that we buy is pure cow's milk. It needs to say on the packet that it's cow's milk, yeah? But once it says on the packet or on the bottle that it's cow's milk, you can rely on that. Why? Because any shop owner or any milker, any farmer would be crazy to mix up some other milk in his cow's milk because he'll lose his license. If the health authorities catch him, they'll make him pay tremendous fines and they'll put him out of business. And this guy is just there for business. So he has a tremendous incentive to not mix anything else in his milk apart from pure cow's milk. So if so, I know that the milk I'm buying, if I'm in a country, right, we have to, of course, it makes a big difference where you are. If you're in a country where there are controls over the milk, where the government is controlling the milk and checking the milk, and the health authorities are checking the milk, and only cow's milk is being sold, or certainly if it says on the packet that it's cow's milk, it has to be 100% cow's milk without any other milk mixed in. So you know that this is kosher milk. So what's the problem? We have a rule in all cases of witness that where you know something, it's as if you saw it. Right? It says in the Torah that a witness has to either see or know, or ra'ah or yada. Knowledge is like seeing it. Once you know something, it's as if you saw it. For example, in the Kosher Mishpat, in Jewish monetary law, the Gemara talks about a case of two people that went into a closed room, and there's no windows there, and no one knows what happened in there, and one of them comes out damaged, and he says, the other guy did this to me. He broke my arm, or he caused me this wound on my arm, and the other guy denies it. So, is the fact that we saw these two guys going into the room alone, and we saw that when this guy went into the room, he didn't have any wound, and he came out of the room with a wound. So is that enough proof to make the other guy pay for the damages when he contradicts it and he says, no, I didn't do that, he did it to himself? Seeing as there's a possibility that he did it to himself, so you cannot make the other guy pay on the basis of the fact that the two were alone in the room, because there is a possibility that he did the wound to himself. But what if the wound is in a place where it's not possible for him to do it to himself? Right? The Gemara says between his shoulder blades at the back of his back, he has this wound, and the only way that he could have got it is if the other guy did it. And as I said, When they went into this closed room, we knew that he didn't have a wound. And when he came out of the closed room, we see that he has the wound. And he says the other guy did it. And the other guy contradicts and says, no, I didn't. He did it to himself. Nevertheless, in such a case, we can make the other guy pay for the damages because it's not possible that he did it to himself. We know, even though we haven't seen, we have knowledge, 100% knowledge, that this other guy must have caused him the wound. So we see that in cases of Jewish law, you can rely on knowing something. So why here is it different? Why in the case of milk do we find that there's such a thing as Chalav Yisrael? Even that milk where a Jew was there at the time of milking, right? It doesn't have to be that the Jew milked the cow. The Jew was there at the time of milking to make sure that the milk is cow's milk. Why? Why isn't the knowledge that we have, the fact that we know that nothing else was mixed in, why isn't that enough? Rav Moshe Feinstein asks the same question. And he says that in America, where the authorities control the production of milk and they have very strict rules and they have fines and taking away of licenses for anyone who was caught selling anything other than pure cow's milk. So he says, you can rely, seeing as here there's knowledge, you know that what you're buying is cow's milk, you would be able to drink milk even if a Jew was not there at the time of milking. And that's what we call Chalav Akum. Right? Chalav Akum means that a Jew was not there at the time when the animal was milked. Says Moshe Feinstein, you can do it. We know. You know it's milk. Nevertheless, says Moshe Feinstein, he writes in the same tshuva, he says, but I don't do it. I wouldn't drink such milk. And he says, someone who's a Baal Nefesh also shouldn't drink such milk. Someone who's a Baal Nefesh means someone who cares about their spiritual level. Why? Why wouldn't Moshe Feinstein drink such milk? We know that it's cow's milk. What's the problem? We know that in many of our mitzvahs in the Jewish religion, there are things that we don't understand. There are plenty of things that we don't really understand why this we can eat and this we can't eat. People can come up with all sorts of explanations that the kosher animals are docile animals, that vegetable eat, they don't eat meat. Okay, fine. But if we were to find an exception to that rule, we wouldn't be allowed to eat it. If you were to find me a very docile animal that doesn't chew the cud and doesn't have a split hoof, just because he's docile, I wouldn't be able to say, well, he's docile, so I can eat him. There are plenty of things that we don't understand. We don't really understand why we have to do them. Nevertheless, we know that eating kosher, following the rules, the halachas of our Torah, have a spiritual effect on us. Someone who's eating non-kosher food, it has a spiritual effect on them. Even though they're eating the same cow that the guy that's eating kosher is eating, the only difference between the two is the way that the animal was killed. And the way that the non-Jews killed their animal, I'm sure they'll tell you too, that we made sure we got out all the blood. And it was done as humanely as possible. They even say that it's more humane than the way we do it, which is not true. Nevertheless, we know that to eat non-kosher has a spiritual effect. It's not just a question of knowing here. It's a question of a spiritual effect that these things can have on us. We don't know enough to be able to tell you in which particular mitzvah it's going to have a spiritual effect on you, and in which mitzvahs it's not going to have an effect on you. So Moshe Feinstein is telling us here that maybe the thing of milk, Chalav Yisrael and Chalav Akum, maybe has a spiritual effect on you. Maybe it affects you spiritually if you drink Chalav Akum, Chalav milk where a Jew was not there at the time of milking. And Rav Moshe Feinstein is saying, I'm not going to take any risks. Why should I take a risk with my soul? Right? It's the most important thing that there is to me. And so therefore, his advice is that the person should be careful to have Chalav Yisrael all the time. Even though anyone that's having Chalav Akum is certainly not doing anything wrong, and definitely not that there's going to be any problem with their utensils at home, with someone who's more stringent from using their utensils. That certainly is not going to be a problem, right? And more than that, they're not even doing anything wrong. You can't say that they're doing anything wrong, right? Because we know it's cow's milk. But nevertheless, the Moshe Feinstein is telling us here that someone who cares about his soul will be more stringent. What you should do, I can't tell you. It depends on each person, on their spiritual level, and where they're holding at any particular time in their life, as to whether this, and where it also going to depend on where they're living, right? As to whether you can get hold of Chalav Yisrael. It's not something you can get everywhere. So it's a question that each person needs to ask his own rabbi and to decide what's suitable for him. Certainly, let me emphasize again that someone who's relying on Chalav Akum in a country, in a place where there are controls of the government on what's being sold and ensuring that it is only cow's milk, then they're certainly doing nothing wrong. Someone who's relying on that, they can rely on that. But someone who's a Baal Nefesh, as Moshe Feinstein says, as he should be taking on himself Chalav Yisrael. As I said, I can't tell anyone what to do. Each person has to ask their own rabbi. Thank you.